Is all research and development political? So this video is probably particularly relevant for people that are in academic research, but this is really an important component that happens in research labs as well, national and international research labs, where people see this in large corporations, not even really large corporations, but big enough that they have a couple of employees that are doing research and development. So what I'm going to do is answer that question and give you some hints and tips in terms of how to actually deal with this. By the way, I'm Professor Dave Massack. I teach about innovation. I do research on innovation. And this is one of the things that people forget about, is that there is this view within the popular culture or literature that this is a very linear, very simplistic process that is all laid out. But the truth is that the whole process is extremely political. The funding at the national and international level, why different projects get funded in different ways, is simply because of the political pressure of where people see their country going and what they're going to invest in. In large corporations, it's often the same thing too. They are determining where they're going to go, and that's often just a guess at senior level areas, right? It sometimes is a little bit more of an educated guess where they have information, but research and development is very much a very forward-looking thing. And that's what we're sort of trading off here. And that's what we're really thinking about, is the trade-off between now and tomorrow. And tomorrow is always going to be uncertain. We don't know what is going to happen in the future. And the farther you go into the future, the more uncertain we are. And whenever there's uncertainty or ambiguity, there's room for political action. And there's room for people to determine where they're going to go based on their own personal opinions. And it's often very difficult to sort of get people to arrive upon the same vision of the future. It's perhaps a little bit easier in private organizations because the goal is a little bit more well-defined, but it's still not that easy to get people to understand and see where you're going. So how do you deal with this? Right? So at all areas of an organization, whether you're in a national federal laboratory, whether you are in a university laboratory, how do you deal with this? Maybe you are doing a PhD or a master's student. How do you deal with this sort of political process that happens all the time? This is really a process. There's two things I want you to really practice. The first one is getting used to storytelling. And really thinking about, how am I going to tell this story? It's a lot different than what you're told and how people understand the world in terms of this very linear process. But you have to get used to storytelling, where you're getting people to imagine a world that they didn't know existed. And so you want to think about, how do you get people to join something that is completely ambiguous or doesn't quite make that much sense, where you have to really think about, how do you entice people? How do you get people to believe in you as a person? How do you get people to understand where you're coming from, right? All of these questions are really incredibly important parts of the process of doing research and development. It seems really different than what you're told or what you believe. You think it's this very simplistic view, but it's really not. It's a complicated view of where people are coming from different perspectives, and you have to figure out, it's called coalition building. You have to figure out how you're going to build this coalition where people are going to believe what you're going to say. And so this is the second thing that I really want you to practice and think about, is you can come at it in a very nasty way, and you can come at it in a very political, very overt, and covert way, where it seems like a very political process, where people understand where you're coming from. You're being kind of a bully. You're adding a lot of stress to the situation. It doesn't feel good throughout the process. And how do you know if it doesn't feel good? is you just simply look at people's expressions on their face. And I know that's really difficult for some people to see these expressions, but there'll be a little subtle, like a big gulp somebody will do, or, that the room gets a little silent, for example, if you're around. Like all of these things are little cues where people just don't feel as comfortable around you, right? And that usually means that there's something that's political that's going on. Now, it also could mean that you are at a different level in the organization, which is totally normal as well. But at the same time, it's your job as a leader to make people feel comfortable, or to work towards making people feel comfortable. They're never going to be completely comfortable around you, but you can work on that. And so how do you do this, right? You have to take a step back and be okay with who you are. I know that seems really weird, but that's where you have to really work on your ego. You really have to work on being more humble. You have to work on, realizing that other people get the benefit of the doubt. You have to work on making sure that people feel engaged and present, and they feel empowered. All of these things are really difficult, right? Like getting somebody to feel empowered, you might think of it as like, you want to help out as much as possible. Well, it's really hard. You often have to pull back so that they gain the empowerment themselves, which means that they're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be as nice as you thought it was going to be at the beginning. All of these things are really challenging things that you have to deal with that come up routinely whenever you're doing this, right? And that's where you're trying to balance. And that's why I can give you all these kind of frameworks and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure if they're helpful. I think the best thing for us to imagine is, what would it be to be as civil, empathetic as possible? And empathy is where I'm getting you to imagine, how would you imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes? And what does that look like? And how are you going to do that? And that's the key thing, is thinking about, oh my gosh, that this is actually really tough. And you need to really work on getting other people to feel that support. And it's extraordinarily hard for all of us to go through this. I struggle with this. I don't know what the right amount is of balancing. Like, I just want to jump in and do the damn thing, right? I understand that. But at the same time, sometimes you got to take a step back and let other people grow, or it's going to take some time for them to work on it, right? Like, there is a lot of steps that go on, and you have to find the right balance of, how do you get people to feel comfortable and empowered that they want to jump forward and be part of a larger, I don't like the team, but the idea of team, but be part of something that's larger than them, right? You cannot force people to do things. You have to take a step back and say, I need other people to volunteer to be part of what I'm actually trying to do. And then I'm going to try to be as cheerful and as joyful as possible, and reflect on that as much as you possibly can. It's hard to do, I understand, but that's the exercise of what you're trying to do, is thinking about, what is the culture I really want? How do I want other people to be treated? And what am I going to do to go forward to make sure that this is an empowered, exciting, and energized place to actually work? And that's your job. That's everybody's job. If you are in a research environment, is to collectively participate in this, where we try to make everybody else feel better. And we try to empower everybody else. Hard thing to do, I understand. But that's where that humility comes in, and where you got to take a step back and do the best that you possibly can. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.